Put me in the middle of your mission. Help me find the strength to say, if God be for me, then who can be against me this day?
Welcome back to Puppets on Power. We are so very glad you have returned and are very excited to continue the story of Joseph and his coat of many colors.
As a quick review, Ron, if you remember, Joseph's brothers were not too fond of him. So they faked his death and sold Joseph to the slave traders who took him to Egypt.
That is where we pick up the story. While the dad, Jacob, was mourning the loss of his son, the slave traders were taking Joseph to Egypt. They took him to the slave market where Potiphar, who was one of Pharaoh's officials, bought him.
And Joseph worked very hard for Potiphar and did such a good job that Potiphar put him in charge of his entire household, his businesses, and his personal affairs.
Well, one day, while Joseph was there working and the entire household was away,
Potiphar's wife noticed how handsome Joseph was and wanted him to act like he was her husband.
but Joseph said,
You are already married, and your husband, who is my boss, trusts me with everything he owns and put me in charge of his entire household. He treats me as an equal. How could I violate his trust and sin against God?
But she kept after him day after day.
One day, she grabbed him by his cloak.
Kiss me, you handsome man.
And Joseph knew he had to get out of the house quick.
Then she started yelling and screaming so that all of the servants came running. Then she lied and said,
Joseph tried to attack me, so I started screaming. He was afraid you all would hear me scream, and he would get in trouble. So he left so quickly that he left his cloak here in my hand. See?
When her husband Potiphar got home, she lied again and told him the same story.
Potiphar believed his wife and was furious. He threw Joseph in jail. While in jail, Joseph continued to work hard and do a good job. So the warden over the prison put all the other prisoners under Joseph's authority.
2 of the prisoners in jail used to work for Pharaoh. One used to be his cupbearer, and one used to be his baker.
They both had dreams one night and were very upset the next day.
What's wrong with you two? You look like you had a bad night's sleep.
We both had bad dreams, but no one can tell us what they meant.
Don't interpretations belong to God? Tell me your dreams.
In my dream, there was a vine with 3 branches, with blossoms that turned into the grapes. I took the grapes and I squeezed them into a cup, and I put the cup in Pharaoh's hand.
Oh, that's an easy one. Pharaoh is not mad at you anymore, and in 3 days he will give you back your job. And when he does, remember to tell him about me, so I can get out of this prison. I've done nothing wrong and shouldn't be here.
Then the baker told him his dream.
In my dream, 3 baskets of white bread were on my head. In the top basket were baked goods for Pharaoh, but birds kept eating them out of the basket.
Well, this one is not so easy for me to tell you about. In 3 days, Pharaoh will have you killed and hang you on a tree. Birds will come to eat your flesh.
In 3 days, Everything Joseph said did come true, but the cupbearer totally forgot to tell Pharaoh about Joseph being in jail.
2 years later, Pharaoh had 2 dreams the same night and was very upset the next morning. He called together all his magicians and all his wise men, but no one could tell him what his dreams meant.
Then the cupbearer suddenly remembered about Joseph being in prison. He told him about how good Joseph was at interpreting dreams. So Pharaoh sent for Joseph.
I've heard you are good at interpreting dreams.
Oh, I am not able to, but God can.
In my dream, I was standing at the Nile when 7 fat cows came up from the river. After that, 7 sickly, thin cows came up from the river and ate the fat cows. Then I woke up. But when I finally went back to sleep, I had a second dream. In my second dream, 7 heads of grain, plump and ripe, were on one stalk. Then 7 thin and scorched heads of grain sprouted up, and it ate the 7 plump and ripe ones. What does all that mean?
Both dreams mean the same thing. There will be 7 years of great abundance and lots of food. The farmers will all do well. But after that, there will be no rain. There will be a famine for 7 years, and no one will have any food to eat. So Pharaoh, you need to find someone to be in charge so that lots of food can be saved and stored up now. All the food in storage can be used later during the famine.
But who? Who would be a good person to oversee all of this? Who should be in charge? I know. Let's make it the most wise and intelligent man I know. Let's have Joseph be in charge.
So Pharaoh placed Joseph in charge of all of Egypt. No one was greater in Egypt than Joseph, except for Pharaoh himself. At this time, Joseph was 30 years old. He got married and had children of his own.
And next would come the 7 years of feasting, and then the 7 years of famine. But Joseph wondered whatever happened to his father and his brothers. And his brothers wondered whatever happened to Joseph.
Where are they all now? And what were they doing? Stay tuned for part 3.
When all creation hears your breath, when all of history points to you, when life itself